Analyses in Fawn, or built-in analyses with Fawn, differ from queries in that when we compose queries, we have to worry about composing our query, and we also have to worry about choosing and configuring the type of report we want to report our query results. Analyses are different in that everything is built in. So if we look at the analysis menu, what we have done is built a series of analyses and reports all combined into one thing that enable us to look at consonantal behaviors, diacritics, number tones, phones, phone inventories and frequency counts, phonological mean length of utterance, word inventories, individual phonological processes. We have a list here, and we could expand on that list if you guys had any request on that. And also some specialized analyses. For example, the multisyllabic nonlinear analysis that Glenda Mason has proposed in her thesis. The vocalization analysis that Shelley Velleman and her colleagues have come up with. The word match analysis used by May Bernhardt and her colleagues, and as well as the word level analysis of polysyllables created by Sarah Masso in her thesis as well. So what this analysis menu is really a repository for the types of analyses that we hear about perhaps the most often in the literature on clinical phonology. But as I mentioned earlier, there are many of these analyses there that can be useful to many people interested in phonological development outside of disorders. For example, phone inventory. So let's have a look at phone inventory for now, and you'll see it's very, very simple how this works. So when you open an analysis, you get to a wizard that looks like the query wizard. So here you can select, for example, the sessions you want to look at, and here in the name of saving time, I will just look at a few sessions. And every time you select session, you also have a system to select what participant or participants you want to look at. And here you click next, and there's always a form or a set of parameters. If you don't want to change anything, here we're looking at phone inventory, and what the /W phonex means, it means any phone. So you can use that as a place to start and hit next. And Fawn will do the math for all the sessions that you've selected, and will give you a list of the phones that are used in those sessions and their counts. So let's see what the report looks like in a few seconds. Here you go. So what we have beyond the summary is we have a list for every one session. So the sessions being listed in the tables there. We have a list of what phones were used in IP target forms and how many times in every one session, and the same for IP actual forms, so that we can see, for example, using this table, that the child in the target form attempted the consonant P 17 times in the first session, 18 times in the second session, and so on. And when you look at productions, then you can see that the production was pretty much following these numbers. But when we look at other phones, for example, at S in IP target, you can see there are 30 attempts at the sound S in IP target, but in the same session, if we look at S, right here, we can see that there are very, very few productions in comparison, about half, right? So that something happened to S in that session that may be worth a look from the perspective of analysis. Moving on to just another analysis, what I will do is pick the analysis that we probably hear about the most often in the field, which is percentage of consonants correct. Sorry, I opened the wrong window. So and the percentage of consonants correct is built into the percent phones correct that we have in our analysis menu. So the way this works is, again, the same. You can select the sessions you want to look at, hit next, and then select the precise analysis you want of all the phones correct. So we could do all phones, we could do consonants only, vowels only, and so on. So let's do the PCC analysis the way that most people use it. And for this analysis, there are a few options that people familiar with the literature will say, okay, can be useful for certain types of analyses. But here we'll go with the factory settings. And so what Fawn will do is look at all of the target phones that the child, all the phones that are present in IP target, and calculate an accuracy score, and also give information about whether those phones were produced accurately or substituted or deleted, for example. And this will give us a table that everybody in the field of speech-language pathology will find very useful, in that calculating PCC scores manually can take a lot of time. And so here we're only a few seconds away from getting the results we need for those first few sessions. Here you go. So what we have is a summary for all participants. In this case, we have only one participant. So we can see that over those 4 sessions, we had 1,502 consonants that were attempted by the child, of which about 1,100 were produced. Okay, and that gives us scores for a PCC, an overall PCC, over those 4 sessions of only 34%. And these are all of the IP patterns that come with that. So you can see with this table, you can see what happens to individual consonants and how many times it happens through the sessions we're looking at, which gives you additional information. And by scrolling down, you can then access the information for every one session. And here you can see that the child's overall PCC, because we're doing only consonants, but here the report has the PPC, the generic percent of phones correct, even though our query is, our analysis is about consonants, so the tables are generic, but the results here are showing us that the child's overall performance on consonants did not move very much during those first 4 sessions. And just for the fun of it here, what we could do, so keeping about 34% in mind, what we could do is return to our participant and session selection, and only look at the last session and run the same analysis. And here we'll obtain a score that should be faster, because there's only one session to process as opposed to a full 4 sessions. And as we can see here, on that last session, the child's performance with the general measure had improved from about 35% to about 61%. So using the PCC or any version of the PPC, we can obtain general measures about child's productivity and child's overall accuracy rate that can serve in normative or developmental studies of child phonology. And as it is the case for any query and analysis, all of the data that we see in the report preview can then be exported, and here I will use the Excel format just to give you an example of what that table would look like within Excel. So we'll open the table now, and as you can see, what we have is our overall PPC score. Let me blow up this interface a little bit so that you get to read better. And here we have all of the report, and IP patterns. So every section of the report you find here is found in an Excel sheet, so that you get access to the data in case you're interested in doing more analysis on these data or use them for presentation or educational purposes.